नमो तस्य भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्य नमो तस्य भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्य Greetings everyone. Good to see you all. It's been a momentous week uh, with the passing of Bhante, the one who has given the great gift of the Buddha's Dhamma to all of us here. The sutta I'll be reading today does in part touch upon the theme of impermanence of passing on as well. It's a very beautiful sutta. It is, in terms of the language, there is not too much in terms of technical terminology. It's very straightforward to follow. But just as the word sutta implies, sutta is essentially a thread, one of many threads that is part of a very large tapestry of the Dhamma taught by the Buddha. And just as the name suggests, this sutta touches on a lot of the most fundamental teachings of the Buddha. This is from the Anguttara Nikaya, the book of the fives. Its number is 5.57. It has many translations, the name of this sutta in English. So some of them are subjects of contemplation or themes. More popularly, it is known as the 5 remembrances. In many traditions, these 5 remembrances are often used uh, as a part of the regular routine that a person follows. I'll be using the translation by Bhikku Bodhi today, and I'm just sharing the link in case anyone wants to have a look at it. Give me a moment. Sharing it on the chat here. I will start with a full reading of the sutta. Like I mentioned, there is not too much to be explained in terms of terminology. Most of you would be familiar with the things. It is fairly easy to follow, and we'll have a discussion about it after the sutta is being read. From Anguttara Nikaya, the book of the fives, 5.57, the 5 remembrances. Students, there are these 5 themes that should often be reflected upon by a woman or a man, by a householder or one gone forth. What 5? First, a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am subject to old age. I am not exempt from old age. Second, a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am subject to illness. I am not exempt from illness. Third, a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am subject to death. I am not exempt from death. Fourth, a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I must be parted and separated from everyone and everything dear and agreeable to me. Fifth, a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am the owner of my kamma, the heir of my kamma. I have kamma as my origin, kamma as my relative, kamma as my resort. I will be the heir of whatever kamma, good or bad, that I do. For the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus? I am subject to old age. I am not exempt from old age. In their youth, beings are intoxicated with their youth, and when they are intoxicated with their youth, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. But when one often reflects upon this theme, the intoxication with youth is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus. I am subject to old age. I am not exempt from old age. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus? I am subject to illness. I am not exempt from illness. In a state of health, beings are intoxicated with their health. And when they are intoxicated with their health, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. But when one often reflects upon this theme, the intoxication with health is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus. I am subject to illness. I am not exempt from illness. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus? I am subject to death. I am not exempt from death. During their lives, beings are intoxicated with life. And when they are intoxicated with life, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. But when one often reflects upon this theme, the intoxication with life is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus. I am subject to death. I am not exempt from death. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus? I must be parted and separated from everyone and everything dear and agreeable to me. Beings have desire and lust in regard to those people and things that are dear and agreeable, and excited by this lust, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. But when one often reflects upon this theme, the desire and lust in regard to everyone and everything dear and agreeable is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus. I must be parted and separated from everyone and everything dear and agreeable to me. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus? I am the owner of my kamma, the heir of my kamma. I have kamma as my origin, kamma as my relative, kamma as my resort. I will be the heir of whatever kamma, good or bad, that I do. People engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind, but when one reflects upon this theme, such misconduct is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus. I am the owner of my kamma, the heir of my kamma. I have kamma as my origin, kamma as my relative, kamma as my resort. I will be the heir of whatever kamma, good or bad, that I do. This noble disciple reflects thus. I am not the only one who is subject to old age, not exempt from old age. All beings that come and go, that pass away and undergo rebirth, are subject to old age. None are exempt from old age. As he often reflects on this theme, the path is general. He pursues this path, develops it, and cultivates it. As he does so, the fetters are entirely abandoned and the underlying tendencies are uprooted. This noble disciple reflects thus. I am not the only one who is subject to illness, not exempt from illness. All beings that come and go, that pass away and undergo rebirth, are subject to illness. None are exempt from illness. As he often reflects on this theme, the path is generated. He pursues this path, develops it, and cultivates it. As he does so, the fetters are entirely abandoned and the underlying tendencies are uprooted. This noble disciple reflects us. I am not the only one who is subject to death, not exempt from death. All beings that come and go, that pass away and undergo rebirth, are subject to death. None are exempted from death. As he often reflects on this theme, the path is generated. He pursues this path, develops it, and cultivates it. As he does so, the fetters are entirely abandoned and the underlying tendencies are uprooted. This noble disciple reflects us. I am not the only one who must be parted and separated from everyone and everything, dear and agreeable. All beings that come and go, that pass away and undergo rebirth, must be parted and separated from everyone and everything, dear and agreeable. As he often reflects on this theme, the path is generated. He pursues this path, develops it, and cultivates. As he does so, the fetters are entirely abandoned and the underlying tendencies are uprooted. This noble disciple reflects thus. I am not the only one who is the owner of one's kamma, the heir of one's kamma, who has kamma as one's origin, kamma as one's relative, kamma as one's resort, who will be the heir of whatever kamma, good or bad, that one does. All beings that come and go, that pass away and undergo rebirth, are owners of their kamma, heirs of their kamma, all have kammas as their origin, kamma as their relative, kamma as their result. All will be heirs of whatever kamma, good or bad, that they do. As he often reflects on this theme, the path is generated. He pursues this path, develops it, and cultivates it. As he does so, the fetters are entirely abandoned and the underlying tendencies are uprooted. So, a small verse at the end of the sutta. Worldlings subject to illness, old age, and death are disgusted by other people who exist in accordance with their nature. If I were to become disgusted with beings who have such a nature, that would not be proper for me, since I too have the same nature. While I was dwelling thus, having known the state without acquisitions, I overcame all intoxications. Intoxication with health, with youth, and with life, having seen security in renunciation. Zeal then arose in me as I clearly saw Nibbana. Now I am incapable of being intoxicated with sensual pleasures. Relying on the holy life, never will I turn back. I'll take a pause there. Does anyone think this is a pessimistic sutta? Just out of curiosity, you can raise your hand or turn on your video and nod. Does this make you feel down or unmotivated in any way? Do you want to add something, Nick?
Uh,
I,
Sir, it is really very interesting sutta. Like one can realize for oneself that everyone is subjected to illness, death, suffering, and we are the owner of our own kamma. That is very true. The 5 recollections which one may remember daily, which will be helpful in their practice. It's very good sutta, sir.
May you wanted to share something?
yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I was just reflecting many years ago when I first started learning meditation. And the teacher that I was learning from, I remembered every time we finish the chanting and the meditation, he will lead us through these 5 contemplations. And I've never asked, really, I don't know why at that time, but I think in some traditions, if I'm not mistaken, the monks in those traditions, it's like part of their daily practice to reflect on these 5 themes. I might be wrong, so someone here might know better. I'm not sure if it's the Thai forest tradition or the Sri Lankan forest tradition, but the meditation teacher I was learning from, it was a daily as part of the meditation reflection. So I actually have a quick interesting, I found it quite interesting. So I had 2 questions. So the first question was in the first part of this sutta, the Buddha kind of said, okay, so these are the 5 themes and the benefits when we reflect on the 5 themes. Then the second half of it is slightly different. So it's like the reflection is like, I am not the only one that has to go through this, which to be very honest, the reflection that I learned from that meditation teacher before stopped at the point of I am subject to da. So this is the first time that I see the second part. I am not the only one. And then when I noticed how for every paragraph of the I am not the only one reflection, it said here, he pursues this path, develops it, and cultivates it. As he does so, the fetters are entirely abandoned and the underlying tendencies are uprooted. So I'm trying to think whether is that in relation to when we do this reflection, it is more in reflecting it. Sorry, I'm jumbling up my words, but is the reflection more direct to the 3 correct characteristics, or I'm trying to see why the Buddha introduced this second half. Why did he not stop at the I am subject
First
to?
half. Great reflections, and you're absolutely right, May. So every time I had read the 5 remembrances before I read this sutta, it always used to stop at I am. And as you said, there are many proper Buddhist traditions as well as a lot of organizations, Buddhist inspired organizations that do these 5 remembrances as a daily ritual. So let's get to this one by one. So I'll get to the point that you've raised about like why the second part, right? And in fact, I will be starting with. I'll just touch upon some of the themes that this talks about. So to me, this sutta is I have often asked people, and a lot of people find this to be it's like a bit of a buzzkill, right? This is making me very aware of my mortality. This is like I don't feel exuberant a lot. But to me, this is an ultimate exposition in compassion as well as realism, and the compassion actually comes through in the second part, right? When we understand that these things that may seem dire, right? Everyone around us is also going through the same thing, right? So at any point of time, people may be facing their worst anxieties with regards to these themes or with regards to facing reality at any point of time. And that comes down to the fifth point, right? So understanding, I think it's a great exhortation for the way we conduct ourselves, right? Understanding that our kamma is affecting not only ourselves but other people, and that we are the heirs of it, allows us to make the choice of taking wholesome actions that are rooted in the Brahma Viharas and not so much in the intoxication with life and uh, health and youth. You know, so that's what it tells me. I think it is a great exposition on compassion and on understanding the nature of reality, not living in a misconception or in a fantasy where reality does not exist, where you are exempt from all these, from death, aging, and illness, and where you will not be separated from things that you hold dear and agreeable. And you also mentioned another thing, which is one of the threads. Like I mentioned, this sounds straightforward, the sutta, but it touches upon very, very important threads. So the first thread we discussed right now is one, understanding the nature of things as they are, uh, a very implicit exhortation for us to cultivate the Brahma Viharas as a very integral part of the path, right? Understanding, developing that compassion for other beings. It also touches very much on the three characteristics. Impermanence is directly referenced in the first four themes, whether it is related to aging, that youth is not permanent, you're subject to old age. Health is not permanent, you're subject to illness. Life is not permanent, you're subject to death. And being associated with, being surrounded with, having access to everyone and everything that you hold dear and agreeable, that is also impermanent. It is the very nature of these things that we must be parted and separated from them, and we are not exempt to them. When we don't understand this impermanence, when we think of this as a permanent state, youth or health or life or even association with what one holds dear or agreeable, then we are setting ourselves up for suffering. Having the understanding of the reality of this helps us to actually do two things. One, the benefits that the Buddha talks about, it prevents us from engaging in misconduct. You learn to appreciate your youth, you learn to appreciate your health when you have it, you learn to appreciate life when you have it, you learn to appreciate that which is dear and agreeable when you have it. And all of that is reflected, should be reflected in the actions that you take in the present moment. The second thing that the Buddha talks about is the intoxication with these things: intoxication with youth, intoxication with health, intoxication with life, intoxication with things that are heir, and agreeable. So, what is this intoxication? Effectively, it is craving. So, when we are associated with these things with a basis of craving, we react in that moment as if in any situation, as if that situation is permanent. That if I do this, then everything will be fine without any care for the consequences of our actions, how it affects others, how it affects us, how it will, it can come around to affect us in the future by the way that we shape our mind when we are taking that action, and by the sequence of actions in the world that we set off, the consequences that we set off when we take that action. By not understanding this, by not understanding the impermanence, by being intoxicated with these things, taking them personally, being associated with them with craving, we can continuously set ourselves up for suffering and take actions that create not only our suffering but the suffering of others. And which is why the fourth part is the most important, because this is what is actually guiding our actions. The others are reflections, they are understandings, they are remembrances that help us to appreciate the nature of reality. But with these in mind, we have to understand that the only thing we have is this moment. Things can and will change in the future. This sutta also reminds me of Vaddekara Sutra, where the or 159, where the Buddha talks about placing the highest importance on the moment, on what you are experiencing at the moment, what is happening in the current moment. And understanding kamma, understanding you're the owner of the kamma, heir of your kamma, understanding kamma as your origin, as your relative, as your result. Understanding that everything that you hold dear is impermanent will lead you, should lead you to taking the most wholesome action at any point of time. And the last remembrance, the last theme, the last subject of kamma is essentially to use this understanding to make sure that any point of time our actions are not rooted in intoxication or in craving, but they're rooted in one of the Brahmavihara, especially when we understand that it is not just us, but all beings that are subject to these themes, these characteristics, these phenomena, right? So I see this sutta touch upon the Brahmaviharas in an indirect way when we talk about other beings. It touches upon the three characteristics in a very direct way, understanding the impermanence of the things that we end up being intoxicated with, taking them personally, not seeing the impermanence in them, and setting ourselves up for suffering. And the ability, by developing our understanding, by being able to see reality as it is, to be able to abandon this craving, understand the impermanence, understand the impersonality, and make our way away from suffering by engaging in wholesome actions. It emphasizes for me the power of the moment, because there is a clear understanding that everything that I'm experiencing now is to a large extent driven by the actions that I've taken in the past, whether it is a physical action, verbal action, or a mental action. And the actions that I'm taking right now will affect me. Even if it is not, often people associate kamma as a balance sheet, that you do something bad and something bad will happen. It's equally bad, or something like that. It is not a balance sheet. It is intention flowing through you. So based on the quality of your intention, the quality of your minds and future mind state get affected. That is how you're the heir of your kamma. And in addition, there are sequences in the world that you set off, which you will experience. So one poor action may result in extremely poor result for you. Even a good action may result in poor actions, poor consequences for you in the world at the moment. It may lead to that, but it will have extremely good consequences for you in terms of how you're shaping your mind through that intention, through the way you have allowed intention to flow through you while taking that particular action, physical, mental, or verbal. So that's what I see from this sutta that really sticks with me. I think it is a extremely beautiful and poignant reminder for us to treasure the moment that we have, to maintain the highest state of mind that we can, which is to either be in a jhana or to cultivate a mind state that is residing in the Brahma Viharas, the divine abode, an abode fit for a god, which is loving kindness or metta, compassion or karuna, joy or mudita, and equanimity or upekha. So it's an exhortation to keep our mind in that state and to perform actions without craving, based in the Brahma Viharas that are wholesome, that minimize suffering for us who are subject to this impermanence, and that minimizes suffering for others who are subject to impermanence and who are also affected by the actions that we decide to take. So beautiful sutta. Yes, May.
Thank you, Rajiv Ji. So just to summarize the second half, if I understand correctly, the second half is really for us to not only see everything in terms of the three characteristics, but to develop the Brahma Viharas through that understanding of all beings going through the same thing as well. So not forgetting that, because it's all about balance. And I guess the practice of the Brahma Viharas will help us keep that balance. Am I correct in this understanding?
Absolutely. And it is also about developing a nuance in kamma, right? So what happens when people start on a spiritual path? They become increasingly self-centered, right? So it is about so nibbana becomes the highest object of craving. But when you think in terms of other beings, then the actions that you take need to be for avoiding the suffering of oneself as well as that of others, right? So this is something uh, the Buddha asked his son Rahula to reflect in the Ambalatika Rahulovat Sutra, where he tells him, at any action, before you perform it, reflect whether this is causing suffering for myself or for other beings. While you're performing it, reflect whether it is causing suffering for myself or for other beings. And after you've performed it, if you have caused suffering for yourself or for other beings, then ask for forgiveness and make a determination to be more mindful in the future. So I think it is important to make our actions well rounded because we are inextricably linked with everything that is around us. Our kamma affects others, the kamma of others affects us. And it is upon us to keep an uplifted mind and you know take actions that help reduce suffering into the whole ecosystem, so to speak. Yes, Vic.
Yeah, sorry, just a last remark, but thank you for bringing up the importance of when we, perform an action and then have a bit of a regret, and then we should ask for forgiveness. I think that is really, really important because sometimes we don't realize it, but the guilt lingers on in the subconscious mind, and it may not arise immediately, but sometimes during the practice, at some point, it will come up as a hindrance. And if we know at that point when, to, 6R and use the forgiveness at that point, then we can clear that hindrance very, very quickly. But if we don't know, we don't have that tool, then it can become a very serious blockage because it had been an underlying tendency for a really, really long time. So thank you for bringing up that important message.
Yes. Then there is the bonus remembrance, right? That I am ignorant. I am subject to ignorance. I am not exempt from ignorance. So I use it as a thumb rule. If I'm at any point of time, I'm feeling anything less than absolutely delighted, exhilarated to be alive and to be experiencing life and to have been fortunate to have received the guidance of the Buddha through Bhante Vimalaramsi. Right? If I anytime I'm feeling away from that, I remind myself there is some ignorance, some craving at the bottom of this. So let me start with that. And as soon as we can shake off the ignorance in that moment, we'll be fine. And anything that we do wrong is just a manifestation of that ignorance. So accepting, I think coming to terms with reality is another very important theme of this, right? So we always represent reality in terms of a fairy tale many times in our mind. And this is a lot about coming to terms with reality. And our ignorance is one big part of it. So one should always remind us that that is our starting point. So it's okay. We need to keep moving away as often as possible, but we should not forget that that is the starting point.
Now I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes, please. Can you turn on your video?
Yes, certainly. Only just now you spoke about the whether it is going to affect other beings or me, and give forgiveness to other beings and do the action. Something we have to understand. Next.
Right. So can I clarify what I mentioned from the Ambalitika Rahul?
It's okay. Giving forgiveness for the other beings and then proceed for the
No,
action.
no, it is about forgiveness for yourself. If you commit an act and after committing the act, you realize that it created suffering for yourself or for other people.
Okay,
for other beings,
before committing the act, in one of the suttas, a seeker started taking the water from the Ganges in front of the Buddha, and he started pouring out because by seeing the bacteria inside. And finally, Buddha speaks only the intention is more important. You quench your thirsty and drink the water, he says. He did not speak about this forgiveness or something. This is what my doubt. Can you please clarify?
Right. So intention is the most important thing, right? So intention is what shapes our kamma. So in fact, the kamma that is mentioned here is intentional action. There is a intention that is powering that action. Whether that intention is based in craving, that I want this, I don't want this, I like this, I don't like it, I want to achieve something by doing this, or whether it is something that is wholesome. This is required to be done. This is appropriate to be done. So let's do it. So the intention of causing harm, for instance, is something that is driven by craving. I want to stomp this ant because I don't like that it is walking on my floor, versus I accidentally trample over an ant. Right. So it is the intention that is important, and even after committing the action, it's possible sometimes even without intention we realize there is a better way to perform that action. So for example, if I walked on the grass and I ended up killing up a lot of ants, and I realized that there is a paved sidewalk on the other side, so even though my intention was not there, I can still be mindful that next time maybe I can choose to walk from the paved sidewalk and avoid creating suffering for other people. So that's the important thing. So even without intention, there is an opportunity for us to identify better ways to act when we realize that the suffering caused due to our actions can be lesser.
I want to say. Here it is a craving driven in the 5 remembrances. There
Right.
it is for existence.
Right.
That intention was different. Okay, thank
Absolutely. There is no other option but to have that water.
you. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
There is a comment from Kevin. The second half of the sutta reiterates, in my understanding at least, that there is no separation between all or any conditioned phenomena. Everything is subject to the 3 marks of existence, that is suffering, impermanence, and not personal. We are all in the same boat. So absolutely, I would agree with the second half of your observation. Everything is subject to the 3 marks of existence: suffering, impermanence, and impersonality. And we are all in the same boat. Absolutely agree. Uh, when you say there is no separation between all or any conditioned phenomena, can you just comment on that? Because it's a fairly large, uh, fairly big statement. And I want to know exactly what you're trying to say there, Kevin. Kevin, would you like to just talk about what you mean by no separation between all or any conditioned phenomena? You're on mute if you're trying to say something. Okay, we'll move on to any other questions that are there. So, Kevin, I completely agree with the second part, that everything is subject to the 3 marks. We are all in the same boat. And one can say that there are very far reaching ripple effects of every action that we take. And things are indeed interdependent on each other. Great. Does anyone else have a question or a comment to share? Yes.
Yes. Hello, Rajiv Dinesh.
Yeah. Hello.
You asked if if we found the sutta maybe pessimistic, but I thought maybe well, maybe the reverse is true, because when people try to maybe cover up that there's something bad going on, or they don't really want to acknowledge that they're sick, it feels kind of anxious and uncomfortable. So putting this out in the open is actually well, maybe it's a pretty big word for it, but it feels a bit cathartic, getting it out in the open. It's nice, and puts things in a nice realistic perspective, I think.
Absolutely. I think that's a great reflection, Everett. And the reason I ask that often is because we are surrounded by an ecosystem and a society that is continuously trying to either use these as things to scare us, or trying to attract us to a fantasy where these things do not exist, right? So, given that it can be sometimes for some people, it can be a bit of a jolt to actually have to confront these things. Now, people often walk through life not being conscious and aware of their mortality, their fallibility, and not knowing that about other people, and therefore often lacking the compassion for that. And we live in a financial reward system that actually incentivizes us to move away from these kind of reflections. So that's why it can be something that is out of the ordinary. I absolutely agree. It is most comforting to actually face the truth, because there is nothing beyond it. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I can't help but comment there. I think that's partially the reason why it's so important to have a support group, So the traditional term in Pali, Kalyana Mitta, or, some people can say kindred spirit, or, because what we are studying and what we're trying to practice is really, in some sense, in the so-called normal way of thinking, it's almost like we're going against what the general public tends to want to do, almost. But then when the more we practice, then we see that actually we're not going against at all. We're actually trying to go with the flow even more. And I feel that's why it's so important to have a support group like this, because then because it's so easy to feel, in inverted commas, alone, if you know what I mean. Like we feel like we are alone in trying to face the world, so to speak. But I think, I appreciate the support group is what I was trying to. So I hope that
No,
other people.
absolutely. And that is the Sangha, right? So the Buddha says, like, the Sangha is an integral part. Like, even when we take the refuges, it is important to have that community, especially because we are not just going around against the grain of social or popular wisdom, but we are also literally going against the grain of our evolutionary wiring, right? So the way we are wired to, in the very, very short term. So the way we've been wired is to seek opportunities and escape threats in a very short period of time. But we use the same wiring to figure out our life, to make decisions over a long term, to interact with others, right? So in some way, we are trying to understand that what is useful. So, for example, for our ancestors, in the either like early human form or the even before that, it made sense to go after every fruit they probably saw. But if you go to a supermarket and go for every candy that you see, so in an age of abundance, I think it is these instant gratification is not something that is very useful, right? So that is unfortunately wired into our uh, basic machinery, and we have to go against the grain in that. And for that, it is very, very important to have the Sangha to help, even these remembrances for us to be able to keep going back to that. Great. Anyone else? Okay. So there's a follow-up comment from Kevin. Things only arise due to dependent origination. So is it for our human birth and existence? The same is true for a tree or a cloud. I'm not a tree or cloud, but arise subject to same processes. Humans aren't special. So I'll just qualify this very slightly, Kevin. I would say this is you can make this statement for sentient beings, the way dependent origination is specifically described, not as something that, things are conditioned based on other things, not just that, but dependent origination is a very specific mechanism that the Buddha has described for the origination of mental phenomena and actions that are driven based on mental phenomena. That what a sentient being experiences and how it acts out. Right? So dependent origination is a very specific mechanism. So if we don't talk about dependent origination in terms of that very specific technical mechanism that the Buddha talks about, yes, we can say that things are interconnected and interdependent. Like as we all know, we are, made of stardust, right? So we are like the elements of the earliest materials in the universe from the Big Bang can be found inside any of us, right? So yes, we are all interconnected in that way. But I would refrain from using the term dependent origination. I think it is very specifically useful for understanding how human experience, mental experience, sentient experience, not just human experience, sentient experience comes about, and leads to actions and propagates that cycle. Yes, Mr. Sam.
So, dependent origination is meant for sentient beings. That's okay, but we have been watching in day-to-day life all those things. Whereas mountains, trees, and other things, how? Please explain.
Trees,
Mountains.
I will have some level of sentience, I would say, but mountains are not, do not, as far as I understand, do not have experience.
Where it is
Sentient experience.
where it is clarified in the books.
It is not, as far as it is my understanding. So I do not have a textual or scholarly answer to that.
Even
I'm sure
even
the sentience
Bhante,
of mountains will not be important for
correct,
the
agree.
progress of this group. So I would not think
Agreed.
that it is useful to understand.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Where it is available, when I asked Bhante Vimalaramsi, he said he referred to Silananda books on Abhidhamma. But I did not find that particular sentence. What you said is 100% correct. Agree. But anywhere it is specified because people are not accepting.
I've not come across anything, and like I said, if I find that what is most important is understanding dependent origination as it happens through me and beings that are sentient enough for me to interact, have a two-way interaction with them, right? So that's where it really helps.
Agreed.
Great. Okay, we can take one last comment or question, and then we'll close with the sharing of merits.
Sir, I just want to add for the View Sharma sir's comments. Like earlier, Bhante in one of the talk, he told that trees used to laugh when he used to visit. Just I wanted to add.
No, absolutely. Trees are sentient. They have a nervous system that is chemically driven, not electromagnetically driven. So they are taking decisions. No, they are taking decisions which way to bend, and in some way they have some level of sentience. Now it's where do you draw that line of sentience? It's a great philosophical and theoretical question. I think and it's good to. I mean, if the trees laugh for Bante, I'm sure that was a great experience. But beyond that, I think we have to stay focused on what will help us to make progress.
Truly, sir. Truly, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's share merit and let's keep the remembrances in mind, and let's not forget the bonus remembrance that we are starting from ignorance. So let's be kind to ourselves when we make mistakes, when we forget the learnings from these remembrances, and move forward with more determination and kindness for ourselves. The lesson of compassion is not just for other beings. The lesson of compassion has to start at home with ourselves, right? May suffering once be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, sir. Thanking you all, sir.
Thank you, Rajiv ji.
Thanking you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.